Please give Julian Malnic a warm welcome as he comes up.
The new medievalism. Ladies and gentlemen, I get a column in the Financial Review, and I'm just working up on my next one. So you guys are kind of the guinea pigs, and I'm going to run it at you because it's kind of interesting thought that's been evolving for me. If you go back, our ancestors lived in a holistic world. If we were to go back 200 years to our village or our small township, I mean, 200 years ago, this place was a little clump of people down near the water there somewhere. If you go back into any community 200 years ago, we were essentially village dwellers. And in that village, everybody had a web of connection, connecting their purpose, their knowledge, inputs and outputs. Today, that is lost. Today, strangely, despite the intense light of the communication era, there is a sort of new dark ages arising in our knowledge, or lack of it, a new medievalism. Back in the village, we knew where the craftsman got his materials, more or less, what was in hand, how products were made, like swords, ploughs, or even more sophisticated things like compasses, which were, there were instruments made in 200 years ago. And we also knew how these products were used, who used them, and where they went. Today, the product supply chain from mine to Wallmart's shelf, for you folks, Kmart, is lost. The modern consumer knows not where it comes from or from what it is made. Walmart or Kmart or the internet shop front is a stone wall, behind which lies the dark beyond of production. The shopper might get as far as reading when you receive it, you get out of the wrapping or you take it home, it might get as far as reading the made in label, which tells you something about the production. It doesn't tell you where the materials came from or what they were made of. There's a neat little label I saw recently. You might have seen this on the Apple stuff. It's instead of saying made in China, they say designed in California. That's cute. We should have Australian iron on Hyundai. Back in our ancestral village, there was a vibrant knowledge illustrating every path from beautiful material to beautiful products. For example, in the 17th century Swedish village of Morgedshammar, a place I visited once, a blacksmith shop once made arrows and swords and ploughs. And then they started to industrialise. They used the power of a river to get into larger iron castings and metal processing. And eventually, centuries later, they were the supplier of the large ball mills that you would have seen, these large diameter semi-autogenous grinding mills for Barry's benefit. So they became these producers of these very large mills that then went around the world. But back then, everyone knew what went on in that village. Other villages nearby specialised in other things. And in a district economy, it was entirely comprehensible what went on, who did it, and where it went. So there was a terrific integrity about these old communities, not because they were old, but because they were integrated and because everyone appreciated what they were doing and why. Today, the power of the internet and instantaneous communication mean we can stretch our supply chains around the world. Bearings from here, plastics from there. The paint itself might have ingredients from 4 different nations. Metals might come from the spot market, wherever that is, and so on. Best product, cheapest price. Strangely, unless you are logged on to an engineering school teaching portal, this wonderful modern symphony, and I say it's a symphony because you think of how we coordinate. Look at it all out there and up here. How do we coordinate all of these incredible things to take place in such a magnificent way? Instruments, you know, all of this stuff. It's a symphony of achievement. And today it operates in almost total disconnect with the average consumer. Consumers in consumer land consume in a knowledge vacuum. Their level of ignorance is similar to their intense level of dependence on the rich and ingenious network of industry, invisibly stacking their shelves from behind. Yeah, so how does that matter? Yeah, all good, lots of good motherhood there. Who gives a shit? Well, in lots of ways, consumers are losing touch with their reality. In their minds, they eat meat without killing animals. They drive cars without mining for metals or drilling for oil. And they eat foods without impacting natural ecological systems. Extrapolating their surrealistic universe a little further, maybe it is they who drive their governments to print money with no real backing. Oh, that hit a note. Just so long as the recycling goes out on Tuesday night, their schema is complete. Okay, so how does that matter either? I mean, like, you know, it's all scoring good points against the consumer here. Well, why does it matter? Strangely, this type of air thinking makes industries such as our own mining industry seem superfluous in the minds of huge numbers of the voting public. A talkback caller rings up and says to the jock, "Hey, why do we have to mine coal anyway, when we have nice clean fuel out there like electricity?" Not everybody gets that joke. In fact, a lot of Australians don't get a lot of jokes about where stuff comes from. What do we make out of nickel? Tick, 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 tick. We make stainless steel. They know, they're miners. Where do we use rare earth metals? iPhones, iPads, yeah, but do they know that? Or do they know where it comes from? Or do they know how to mine it? Is it possible to make steel without coal? Now I got you. Everyone's thinking. Where does aluminium come from? What is plastic? Where did my last tank full of fuel come from? I mean, it came from a hole in the ground somewhere. Could I tell you where my last tank full of diesel came from? No. I know where it came from, technically though. What are pink bats made of? So there's no more Kevin jokes tonight, that was it. What is silicon? Where do bricks come from? The questions are many and the knowledge is abysmally low. And schools should be required to tell us why the knowledge is abysmally low. So where it matters is that prosaic notions arise from this. You know, I'm saying the dark ages because it's an ignorance. It's a global, massive ignorance that is emerging between either end of the supply chain, between the iron ore in the ranges of Western Australia to where it's finally consumed, rolling down a freeway in Idaho, having been manufactured in China, for example. I mean, this chain is drawn out, but what's happening is that there are direct impacts from people not understanding where everything comes from when they go to the great holy shrine of Wallmart and buy all their consumer products. Here's one example. Christine Milne believes that that a reasonable target is to have 90% renewable energy by 2030. 90%. That's the level we had before the gold rush. That's not a aspirational goal, that's a hallucinatory goal. All those people were supposed to stop eating the mushrooms. If we close our coal mines, alternative energy will just emerge. But meanwhile, that's our day job. We're exporting 300 to 400 million tonnes of coal a year, and I guess ultimately that's where the pleasing stroke of common sense in dropping our carbon tax for a moment anyway is rewarding. So they also think it is okay to mine uranium. These are the sorts of ideas that come from not understanding holistically, like we did in the village, where products go to and where they end up. It is okay to mine uranium so long as you don't process it. How much sense does that make? What do you use it for? Fixing potholes in the driveway? I mean, it's for if you mine it, somebody's going to use it to make energy. Does it matter that it's not you, ethically? I mean, this is a sort of great example of moral high ground that Australia projects to the world. Everyone should mine uranium, but only unspeakable people would process it. And we've been doing the same thing in all the other, gas and all the other products, energy products. We don't have an energy policy. That's the kind of nonsense that comes from not understanding holistically what we do in a celebratory way. Okay, so if we were to get more wind energy, then we wouldn't need to mine. That's the sort of thinking that's out there. But it kind of overlooks what you're going to make the windmills out of. And how you're going to transmit the power from those windmills to the market and all the products and all the acres of white goods that people are going to drive from those windmills, and who's going to mine those and how that's all going to be reconciled. I mean, those are great aspirational goals, but let's not make them hallucinatory. If you believe, and there's a sort of an underlying, if you believe in a mining economy, then you can't or won't believe in health and social welfare. There's a sort of this polarisation, these dumb paradigms get set up in people's thinking that kind of isolate this very profoundly important process of production, which we're all close to, we understand, we're privileged in that regard. But then there's this great information gap. And here we are with an internet, the highest level of connectivity around the world. I mean, people actually understood this stuff better before we invented the internet. Go figure. Anyway, it's not finished yet. That's as far as I've got. Thank you.